Hey, it's a week until my double mastectomy is complete. I'm having a second unilateral mastectomy, preventative this time, prophylactic, in a week from yesterday. It was supposed to be yesterday, and then one of my surgeons injured herself and needed a surgery of her own that she is now recovering from. So it'll be a week away. And yeah, I'm still a little bit nervous about another surgery. My first surgery was extremely scary up until I went under, and then a huge relief and way easier than I expected after the fact. So that influenced my decision to have a second mastectomy for sure. If you haven't heard my story, I'll recap a little bit about why I'm doing this, and then I'll talk a little bit about how the getting ready process has gone for me. So I made this decision a couple of weeks after my first mastectomy. 1 week after my first mastectomy, we found out that I didn't just have precancer like we thought. I had lobular cancer, which is a cancer that is really hard to see until you take it out, and a lot of people find it accidentally. And it's a cancer that hasn't been researched a whole lot, so we don't know a ton about it. And what we do know is that it's really hard to see until it's very large in imaging, and especially in dense breasts like mine. So when we saw it in there and learned a little more about it, I learned a little bit more about it and discovered that it is common for it to reoccur in the other breast. I decided really quickly that I wanted to get another mastectomy, especially since my first mastectomy was so smooth and so easy and pain-free, and continues to be so 6 months after the fact. I have very, very little pain. It's mostly a health decision and also trauma reducing because the imaging that I've received over the last 10 years has been very traumatic. And more than that, radiologists and biopsies have been extremely traumatic in my story. And so avoiding those things is really important. That's a huge part of my decision. So I went flat after my first mastectomy. It was a bit of a struggle getting there because my first team of surgeons seemed to want to deny me that decision. And so I woke up from my first surgery with kind of what looked like a deflated balloon. And I asked for my next surgery a month later, my revision of margin surgery, for them to make me flat. And they didn't again. They left a lump. And so I'm working on that with this next surgery as well. And I found a new team of surgeons that I trust and that I have impressed upon them how important it is to me to go flat this time. I am technically getting a Goldilocks mastectomy, which is not exactly flat. It's a little tiny bit of a mound that just uses skin and not even the fat underneath the skin in my case. So it's going to be a slight bit more than your typical flat closure. And I've decided to do that because I've always known that I don't like foreign things in my body, nothing even remotely like silicone or plastic or metal, and don't want more surgeries. I want it to be simple and over and healed as soon as possible. After trying a prosthetic on this side where I've had my mastectomy, I still wear a prosthetic on most days, but I feel a lot more authentic and myself when I'm not wearing it. And I know that when I have the double mastectomy on both sides, I will be able to feel a little bit freer to go without prosthesis and just be flat and change my wardrobe and change my image and get used to my new body image, which is really scary, and it's taken some getting used to, especially when it comes down to these last few weeks before surgery. It's a huge body transformation, and I don't want to make light of it. I am kind of celebrating it during most of my time and talking about it, but I'm also afraid of the unknown, of course, and the adjustment period, and whatever I don't realize is going to be a part of that. So that leads me to talking about kind of what I've done to get ready for this surgery and going flat. I've done a lot. I sensed a couple of months ago that I really wanted to record and document my journey, and I wanted to do that visually through photography so that I would know what my body looked like right now before the surgery. And so about a month ago, I met with a photographer and had some kind of like boudoir photos taken with lingerie and without. And a lot of different poses that I was very specific about, that I wanted to capture what my unilateral mastectomy looked like from up where I sit and my eyes look down upon it, as well as from a mirror's perspective, as well as from other perspectives. I also really wanted to capture my natural breast in photos, which I had never clearly done before. I had had one boudoir photography session where I kind of lightly shaded it or shielded it with gauzy fabric, or them, I should say. There were two at that time. And this time I wanted to really graphically capture in bright light as well as in dim light what my breast looked like, because I didn't ever want to forget exactly what it looked like. And that was really important. I'd say that's probably the most important thing that I've done in my getting ready process. The other things that I've done in my getting ready process is I've joined the flat communities online, which is mostly around Facebook right now. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of cohesion around the flat community at large in any other venue besides in Facebook groups, but there are 2 or 3 flat communities in Facebook, and I'll definitely link them below in the show notes so you can find them easily, so that I don't mess up their names here and misguide you. But I've really enjoyed the openness and the authenticity and just really honest, raw sharing that happens in those groups, and the photography that happens in those groups. That's really helped me to understand exactly what I want for my surgery, whether I want plastic surgery or this Goldilocks procedure. I think ideally, looking back, if I had been clearer with my surgeons and really known exactly what I wanted in the first place, I would have chosen what they call a transverse closure, which is just a line across the chest. It just leaves a line and flatness, and in many cases, especially if you're a little overweight, there's a little bit of concavity, so a little bit of a hollowing in the side of what was your breast. I probably would have chosen that, and that's the classic flat look that is becoming more and more common these days. What I ended up with, I didn't know how to ask for that because I hadn't done a ton of research and didn't know there was a lot of different options for closures and incisions. And so what I ended up with was not only not flat, but of course, as I mentioned, they were really trying to prepare me for getting an implant that I did not want, and I had told them I didn't want, but I really had to work with these 2 surgeons that just weren't getting me and weren't getting my message. So I'm left with something that is not transverse and will never be transverse. It will always be a little bit of cleavage, and that's, you know, it's not a bad thing. It's something that I still like and appreciate. So I have a little cleavage here in the middle, and I have a lot of concavity and kind of a hollowness over toward my armpit. And then I have what we call a dog ear over here in my armpit, where there's a chunk of skin that just kind of has to be left there. I had my last pre-op today with my plastic surgeon in my new surgical team, and I asked her, can I chop that down a little bit, because I don't feel like I'm going to be wearing a lot of prosthesis. And she said no, probably it's too complicated to do that without leaving even more dog ears on either side of it. It was done very well the first time, and we probably should just leave it as is. So, I mean, even someone really thin like I am has dog ears over here underneath their armpits. And I'll link to another video where my dog ears are showing through, because I'm wearing more of a tank top camisole outfit, so that you can see what I'm talking about. So yeah, getting into those Facebook flat communities have been really, really helpful. Just like I said, seeing the photos, hearing the stories, hearing the struggles, and women like me who have been denied their wishes the first time around, and feeling that I'm not alone in that has been really important. There's also been a really amazing group, or I guess publication, called Wildfire Magazine that I've just been turned on to recently in the last couple of weeks. And they have a lot of photography there. They have a lot of stories written very well and edited, and they also have a new podcast where they're reading the stories aloud. The women who have written the stories are reading them aloud, and so I've been absolutely binging that podcast. It's not about just flat closure, but a lot of the women that are telling stories on there have had flat closures. It's really nice to hear people's actual voices telling their actual stories and not just see written words and photos. So that's another kind of dynamic to add into the mix that I've really loved just to acclimate to this community and realize that it's really solid community, and these women are going to be there for me. And thankfully, just about a month after my surgery in April, I'm going to be headed out to a retreat. It's just a few miles away from me here. It just happens that the Oregon version of the flat retreat this year is going to be within like 10 miles of my house, which is out in the middle of nowhere, which is kind of crazy. So I'm going to get to know some of the most like audacious and flamboyant and probably extroverted women. I don't know if it's true of all introverts, but I really like retreats as an introvert, but I think most of us are pretty quiet around strangers. And so I'll probably go in very quietly and come out feeling very safe. But there'll be a lot of photography happening at that event. There's someone coming from the East Coast who's doing like a multi-year project documenting what different women's mastectomies look like in raw form. So she'll be there to take our photos if we wish to. And there'll be also just informal photography happening, because that's just what they do at these flat retreats all over the country. And so I found my community, even though I haven't really met many of them yet. I do have a friend who's recently gone flat who's going to that retreat with me, so I'll have a little bit of an ally. And I'm really excited for that. I think that'll be wonderful timing, just right out of recovery, going straight there. And then the other thing that I've done to get ready is I've written a lot myself. I've done a lot of just journaling. I've done a lot of story writing and essay writing, talking to my body in letter form, talking to my lump. The one that turned me on to all of this in the first place was just a benign lump that's still here in me right now, but that I'm giving up in a week, and that has been such a huge part of my story. Writing stories about my mom and her difficult time with receiving the news that I'm going to be losing both breasts by choice, for the sake of my safety and just for the sake of my peace of mind, and how she responded to that, having gone through breast cancer herself, but only having one lumpectomy and one breast. Writing down a ton, and in the last couple of weeks I've just been a mountain of ideas in terms of what I can write about, and creativity is just flowing, which is so nice when you are a writer, when you consider yourself to express yourself really importantly in these ways. It's important to be able to have that inspiration and ideas of what to write about. So I really am grateful that the muse has been with me the last couple of weeks and has helped me process emotionally what I'm going through. All the emotions. Less fear this time around, much less anger this time around. I still have fragments of shame that come up, of course, and will always come up, especially when you think about strangers or adversarial figures in your life viewing you as being breastless. That's a very vulnerable space to be in, and I've had a little bit of an adversarial situation at work lately, unfortunately, and so I'm really nervous about going back to work without prosthetics, and I probably won't because of that vulnerable feeling. So yeah, just preparing myself to feel more vulnerably in unexpected ways, because I'm going to be out in the world being flat more often. And I think I'll like that for the most part, but there will also be surprises to that will be make me feel just a little bit weaker and insecure about myself, of course. And then the transition process. I've shared my photos way more openly than I thought I would on Instagram. I encourage folks who are in my position to create an Instagram account that is just for your breast cancer journey and just for other breast cancer survivors and thrivers to view, and not your personal friends or colleagues. And that's what I've done, and I've been pretty successful at keeping my friends and colleagues out of it, although a few of them have discovered me there. And the ones that have discovered me there and didn't want me to know it have kept quiet about it, so that's safe for me too. But mostly I'm there to connect with other survivors and thrivers and flatties, and I love that. I love that I'm free to share the transition that my body's going through in this visual way, while also writing how I'm feeling day to day about it. It's been so cathartic and so healing to do that in this public, safe environment. And every once in a while there'll be a man that joins, and then I'll find out that he has cancer too, and I won't block him. But most of the time when men join and they are, just interested in looking at your body, it's pretty obvious and you can block them right away. So that's an experience that I didn't know how it would go, and it's gone really well, and I've loved it. So yeah, I will be making more videos this next coming week. I'm going to make a day before video, a day of video, hopefully, if everything goes well, a day after video. And I think my perspective will be much different this time around because I'm not dealing with something that I'm deathly afraid of like I was last time around. I don't feel like I have to be quite as prepared because of that either. I'm a little more relaxed about having everything lined up, and my diet is definitely, you know, locked in, and I'm really strict with myself about health preparations and preparedness for surgery, but that's pretty easy too since I'm a nutritionist. So just a lot more relaxed about it this time, and I'll be talking more about the emotional elements probably right away this time. Mostly I'll be talking about my process and what my wounds are looking like, and maybe I'll even show you what my wounds are looking like. Who knows? Stay tuned to find out. But if you'd like to hear more about my decision to have a double mastectomy instead of just a single one, or to go flat, I have lots of videos that tell that process and that journey, and I will link them up above and down below for you to watch. And stay tuned for next week's video on the day before surgery. I'll see you then.